Thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Annette, for, may I say, provocative talk. And I'm also keeping track of the wonderful characters we've all been referencing throughout this morning. I think we started with Trump, then we went to Shkreli, the Koch brothers, and I think we wrapped up there with the Kardashians. So I'll be keeping a close eye on those references. So now we have, I think, about 25 minutes for some general discussion and some questions and comments. And I want to really emphasize this point. If you have a look at this room, we are sitting in circular fashion as all equals. And this conversation here, this conference here is not just about speakers speaking and everyone else taking note and asking questions, but we want open discussion. We want the tough questions asked. We're here to tackle the world's most difficult issues and the world's most challenging issues. And for those, we need to ask tough questions and really engage in deep discussion about this. So I want to really make it a culture of this symposium over the next 2 days for us to become passionate, to speak about what we value, but also to ask the tough questions and work together to come up with something solid, a final outcome in which we've been set a task for. So now we would like to open the floor for questions, but I may exercise my rights as a chair and start with my own question, and then we'll open it up. So my question is that we know from lots of work we've done in advocacy, and many others have, and we know also from research that facts don't change people. So if that is the case, how can we then inspire people to take action? How can we embed these principles of sustainable development, of fraternity and supportive society within people? What are the examples of where this has happened? I know it's a tough question, but I wanted to. Yes, facts. So basically we know facts don't necessarily change people. So how can we go beyond that and try to really embed these principles within people? So I may just open to the floor.
Let me just say a word, but then others join in. Facts do change people. Don't give up on facts. If we're only in the world of emotions and emotional appeals, we will never win. Actually, it has to be starting from facts that we're going to get anywhere. And we're in a science academy. Science is about facts, and it's about hard facts. And in the preparation of Laudato Si, there were at least a dozen meetings in this chamber of the world leading climate scientists, for example, that came together to discuss this challenge. Facts by themselves are not sufficient. Facts without values are not sufficient. On the other hand, values, if you could call them that, without facts are doomed also to fail, because we'll end up with just demagoguery and emotional appeal. So I want to stay firmly grounded in facts, and absolutely people should be very careful about what they say. People should be working hard about the truthful situation. There is it's not enough without explanation and without hard work. But let's not fall into only emotional appeal. At least for me, I know I'd never win in such a battle, because the demagogues are really good at what they do. Trump is very successful in stirring up people. He has because he lives in a delusional world, he has this twisted ability to bring other people into his delusions, at least some. I don't think we want to be in his delusional world. We want to be in the real world. And that requires us to do the homework in the real literal sense of understanding the issues, of explaining them, of being able to defend them, of knowing what you don't know and finding out how to find out what you do know. But I think that that is by far our most important starting point, because without that, we're untethered. Without morals, we're also untethered, because facts by themselves can be used for any instrumental purpose. We know technology can be used for evil as well as for good, but it's the combination of the two that's essential, and so you need to stand on both feet.
I want to quote Ovidio: "Vido meliora provoque e deteriora secur." So I see what is the best. I say that is the value, that is the best, but follow the contrary. Follow the words. So we need to know, as said Jeffrey very well, the first thing is to understand. And the second thing is to follow the truth that we understand. But because for many different reasons, we can follow other things. We can follow only to have money, or to have career, or to have other things. And in some sense, not follow the truth and the good. So I think that it's very important put the problem of the will and put the problem of the freedom. We need to choose between the good and the bad, between the things that are better and more better. So this is very important, especially for the young people, because Aristotle say that is, sorry for quoting again Aristotle, but in the Ethics say, the virtue is the repetition of the acts, positive acts, and we need to arrive to have the virtue, because in the contrary, it's not easy when the things arrive in a spontaneous way to show us the good. So it's very important to produce facts in our life, in shows the good and shows the things that are positive when we recognize that one thing is truth. What is the reason for what the people like Koch and the other people don't want to follow the idea of climate change and the idea to change the energy? Not because they don't understand, but because they don't want, because it's a problem of money, and prefer to have money and destroy the planet. And this is a question of will. This is a question of election. This is a question of virtue, that we need to be virtue. I think this is an important thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a point of clarification, I was supposed to say, we know facts alone don't change people, but yes. Okay, we would like to open to the floor if we have, yes, down here, if you could.
Sure, so my name is Kim Vong, I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I think with regards to your question, Samuel, around facts, I think there's a need to humanize it. To be able to tell the story of how facts are impacting people on the ground, particularly with regards to our most vulnerable communities. And if I could provide a quick example, in Toronto, like most metropolitans, traffic gridlock is terrible. And it's costing us billions of dollars in productivity and $7 billion in health costs with regards to all of the emissions. But what does that mean for your average Torontonian, your average resident? I cannot imagine $1 million of anything, never mind $7 billion of something. But when you talk about little Amy, who loves playing soccer, but has asthma because of all the emissions, it helps people to understand. If you talk about John, who's stuck in traffic on his way to pick up his little boy Joey from daycare, but can't and is late, that helps people to relate. Or if you talk about Anna, who works 2 jobs just to make enough money to put food on the table for her family, but is at risk of losing her second job, not because she's lazy or not getting up on time, but because she's stuck in traffic through no fault of her own, then people start to understand, because everyone knows an Amy, everyone knows an Anna. And I think through storytelling, through humanizing these facts, it really helps to tell the story about the importance of different initiatives, of different projects that we're all trying to do.
If I may, I'd actually like to challenge something that Dr. Sachs said about science is about facts. And I'm not sure that that's actually the best way to go about it. I think science isn't about the facts, it's more about the pursuit of the facts. And in many ways, if we only focus on how do we get them and not about how do we get there, we have in many ways a very similar methodology to a lot of the, we have a goal, we're only going to focus on that. Kind of not as an attack, but in the SDSN USA Cities report, San Francisco showed up as one of the best cities for eliminating poverty, except for those of you who know San Francisco, it's one of the most inaffordable cities in the world, and they eradicate poverty by pushing them all into neighboring jurisdictions. So by fact, you can say it is a fact that San Francisco has eradicated many forms of poverty, except of course, in order to do that, we need to, should we not also be looking at the methodology? Data alone has no bias, but both the methodology of collection and the communication of it do. Should we not be focusing more on how to get there than where we're going?
Come on. If there's a limit, then you point out the limits or improve the methodology, but to just basically deny data or it's not interesting or we can't say anything. I'm not sure what point you're making, except to say that no report, especially a first-time report, is going to be definitively answering all questions. So it's perfectly fine to point out here's another perspective. But that's not, I'm not sure really the point you're making.
If we present that as a fact and say that it is infallible, then...
Who said, nobody said facts are, look, come on. Something in between infallible and inability to have sensible discussion. When you put forward data, and which is extremely important to do, and we put forward data, for example, in that report, just as an example, we didn't make the data, we reported data from, say, the Census Bureau. By all means, any kind of analytics, and this is true from all sensible speculation from time immemorial, can provoke good further discussion, analysis, and so on. But let's not fall into a trap of saying that therefore all data are relative, we're not putting forward any information, we're not putting forward facts because they're all subject to methodological problems. That's the dangerous world that we're living in, that all you have to do is say fake news and you don't have to pay attention to the news. So I really want to object to that line seriously, because there's a big difference, there's an incredible vulnerability right now to not doing homework. And if you do your homework and you put it forward and someone says, well, there's another dimension to it, fine. If you say, no, you can't really put forward anything as a fact because that's biased and methodologically biased, that's what I heard. And that I would strongly disagree with, because the truth is that we are not even right now able to state something self-evidently true without it being attacked as biased, as false, as, quote, fake news. Every day I put forward facts that are facts as much as we know them, and the answer is CNN equals fake news. Okay, that's a game of destroying the rational basis for discourse. That's not an honest exploration of facts. That is a hostile attack on factual knowledge itself. So we put forward the first cities report. Those are facts. Are they unassailable? Of course not, especially in a first report. But the only answer to them is to improve upon them, not simply an attack that's fake news. That's what we're living through right now. And the idea that there's uncertainty about facts, that, by the way, is the scientific method from the beginning. But the scientific method does not say we don't know anything because it's all uncertain. And in technical terms, we have high probabilities of believing many things. And to deny those is extremely dangerous. That's what's happening right now. Please don't fall into that kind of nihilism, because that leads us absolutely to the worst dangers.
I agree completely, and very nice reflection of Jeffrey. The science arrived to the truth, and we need to respect the trust that is offered for the science. But I want to remark that the people that not want to accept the trust, in this case climate change, is not because not understand, but it's because don't want. It's a question of will, not want, because it's against to his interest, especially economic. And I think that some president is in the hands of I don't know what is the reason, but it's in the hands of the people, maybe because they pay the campaign, I don't know. And it's not a question of trust, of truth, it's a question of will, not want, because it's again to his profit.
Thank you, Monsignor. Yeah. And to quote my father, he says, if you are asleep, you can be woken up. But if you are pretending to be asleep, no matter how hard you try, you won't be woken up. Yes.
Hi, my name's Christopher Hale from the United States. The 4 young people, starting with our coordinator, seem to be asking a similar question again and again about, we believe in facts, we know facts are real, but maybe a question that's coming underneath that is, why are we losing then? You know, why are we losing by communicating the truth, by communicating facts? Why do we see these populist movements that across the world that are factless, that are post-truth, that are winning? And how do we win amidst this? We know we need to communicate the truth. We know we need to present facts. But I even think of our own Christian tradition that we're celebrating here today, this weekend. The Bible communicates a narrative of truth as well. Are we missing the narrative, the larger picture, if you will? And why are we losing?
Hi, my name is Khalid. I'm going to be taking a role as a commentator this year, not presenting a project. But this is kind of a comment just on everything that was said about the whole fake news era that we're going through at the moment. And in terms of winning as well. If we have all the facts, why aren't we winning? Taking the example of the Rohingya crisis again, how is it that a Nobel Peace Prize winning individual who's now taken up office in her own country is not seeing that a crisis of this huge magnitude is not affecting the lives of her own people? And how is it that we can actually get this message across in this era of xenophobia and right-wing policies, how can we move forward? This is for the benefit of all of us to understand how we can approach our political leaders, our MPs, and to effect change at the highest level.
Say something quickly about the last two comments. I really think that we are human beings, are narrative creatures, and we're moral narrative creatures. And if you look at, my old hobby horse, if you look at kind of the neoliberalism of the last 3 or 4 decades, they have a narrative. They have a very strong narrative that, if we get rid of the shackles of government and let free market do its magic, everybody will be better off. I think that's a false narrative, but it's a narrative. But we have not done a good job of creating an alternative narrative based on the values of solidarity and reciprocity, compassion, and empathy, and fraternity. So I think that's absolutely crucial. And my view is, why did our friend Bernie Sanders do so well? The traditional left basically said, well, look, Bernie Sanders his ideas are not thought out. He's just, he hasn't worked. Doesn't have like detailed policy proposals. But that's not the point. He did something that nobody on the left had done in decades. He presented his arguments from a moral perspective, and that's what resonated with people. And to this day, a lot of people, I don't think, fully understand that point, which I think is crucial.
Great, thank you. Maybe 2 more, quickly, just here and then here.
Good morning, and first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I would like to recall one of the topics which was discussed by Professor Sachs about the fact that we need to ensure that the Paris Agreement is actually implemented. Yesterday I was in the north of Italy to deliver a class on climate change to high school students, and I asked them to raise their hands whether they had heard about the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement at least once. I was quite surprised by the fact that more hands were raised for the Kyoto Protocol rather than the Paris Agreement. And the Paris Agreement is nearly 2 years old. The Kyoto Protocol is 20 years old. So it is my impression that although the Paris Agreement had a way bigger impact on the involvement of non-state actors like cities, regions, companies, it is my concern that perhaps the general public and perhaps students are still not really aware of the agreement. So I would like to ask for a few suggestions on how you think we can have a deeper impact on civil society and citizens. How can we actually ensure that the message reaches people who are not already involved in this sector? Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Anne Arabizana from Madagascar. Also very grateful for the opportunity to sit here today and to be part of the discussion. We are talking about the crisis of value, crisis of beliefs and perceptions and new ways of doing things. And I was thinking while sitting in this room today, like, are we ready to be a game changer? And we have been given a homework, a big assignment. But I was wondering, and the question goes to all the room, how will be the handover process? Like the old generation to the new generation, how ready are we to take over and also to really take lead on the change? Because like what we value today here is a kind of technocratic way of providing solutions. And I really believe there's also a need to do this kind of summit with people with no education, their own vision of the global challenges, and valuing a different way of making decisions, different way of thinking. So we really need to go in so many different directions, and it's also what we value. Do we also value people who are elsewhere without education, without the chance to be like we are today, leading a project, leading an initiative, leading on the global agenda so that no one will be left behind.
Thank you very much. If we could have some brief final comments from the panel on those two comments and questions. Would you like to go first?
This is not easy. Okay? And you can't have the expectation that, well, something is true, we said it, people don't believe it, okay, that's the end of the story, we need to do something different. That's a complete misunderstanding about what this challenge is about. And if you don't think this challenge is also technical, then you don't understand the challenges, so we have a lot to talk about. Because the transformation to a low-carbon energy system is technological, because the challenge of feeding the population is technological, because the question of safe water is technological, because the question of renewable energy is technological. It's not only technological. The issue of ethics is about the end purposes. But to achieve the end purposes requires technological knowledge. So it's really important to understand you need different kinds of knowledge to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And, okay, we'll go to Aristotle again. Aristotle talked about many kinds of knowledge. He talked about scientific knowledge, episteme. He talked about technical knowledge, how you get from A to B, techne. He talked about moral wisdom, phronesis. So you don't just have one kind of knowledge. But he certainly didn't say facts are out, give up on the facts. You have had the chance to study. That's really important. The people who study climate change have worked their whole lives on the science. I know many of them. I led an institute for 14 years of climate scientists. They got their bachelor's degrees, then their master's of science, then their PhDs, then their postdocs. Then they worked hard to publish dozens or hundreds of articles. They've worked throughout their lives. They've put up satellites, they've read the data, they've invented new isotopic tracers for understanding how climate change comes. And then someone comes and says, well, I don't believe it. That is for you to understand. Of course, they don't necessarily believe it. They haven't spent 5 minutes being properly trained. They've had no scientific mentorship. They may not want to believe it. They may not be intellectually able to believe it. They've never taken a class. They've never studied. What do you expect? Why do you think this is easy, this topic? Why do you think that that's a test of whether it's right or wrong, the right approach? Put aside the science, let's do something else? No. This is hard. The world's changing very fast. There's a lot of complexity to it. Unless you work round the clock, we can understand only the tiniest fraction of the world we live in. We only get glimpses of this understanding. How many people here could really explain how this works? Not only the digital information, not only the transmission, the solid state physics underneath it, how the lithium battery ion works, how the coding works, what IP protocols are. How many people in this room? Probably nobody. We'd each have a little piece. I could tell you maybe a little bit about the regulation or about the organization of the industry, but the inner gadgetry, how the touch screen works, who the hell knows? Okay, this is not easy. The world's complicated. And that's why it requires a lot of effort. And then there is ill will, there's greed, there's the lack of cultivation of good behavior, which was Aristotle's point in the Ethics. That doesn't come naturally either. That's a lifetime of work to cultivate good values, to cultivate the virtues. That's not something that's second nature, that's hard work. So the starting point cannot be, oh, we failed here, or we need, we're post-fact, or it's rather that there is not a simple path to victory. And there never has been, and there never will be, and the job will never be finished. We're not talking about the ultimate victory of goodness over evil. That's not our job. Our job is to help move something forward that's important, decent, fact-based, with an ethical framework, with the idea that nobody should be left behind, with the idea that people are hurting in a world of great wealth and that they can be attended to. But even to know how to do that, you better study that hard. And if you think that it's only, boy, we said it, but they didn't believe it, we better do something else, that's also not right. And if you reflect on why, it's because things are complicated, because the world is noisy, because people aren't trained. How many people here are trained in climate science? Maybe one or two of you. It's taken me 25 years of reading every day, of heading an institute, to be able to fairly credibly describe what the climate science is. That's hard work. So don't expect this to be easy. But don't lose your cool. Don't give up on facts. Don't give up on the identifying, analyzing. Those ideas are still good ideas. Don't give up on rationality. Don't give up on studying a problem. Don't think that it's going to be the art of persuasion alone, or even mainly. If it is, we're not going to win, by the way, because the dark arts of persuasion can persuade on anything. We're trying to persuade on facts, which I'm going to assert again are facts, not absolutely indelible, unchangeable, but based on the best knowledge of hard work and the cumulative body of science and technological knowledge as best we can understand it, and always subject to revision. Who knew that Newton would be revised by Einstein? Who knew that Einstein would be revised by Schrodinger? Okay, it comes. But there still is a lot of fact that we can rely on, and we're not. But please understand, people don't know much of this. How could they? How could they? So this is hard work. And please train yourselves to understand this. And please train yourselves with, as best you can, and we can help also, with the knowledge that you need to explain what these goals are, why they're important, how they can be achieved. A good way to do it is also, like the example from Toronto, is to know your local area. Because for all of you, you're also at the very intense learning curve stage. I realize it's true. By my age, the learning curve's even steeper, unfortunately, probably because you're also forgetting things you knew at a faster rate. But you never find the point where you feel, oh God, I know it all. Every time you enter a new area, you say, oh, there's a whole world. God, I didn't even know that was a field. I didn't know that this was being written. I didn't know that this was being studied. So you'll never get over that either. But you're at an early stage. So it's really important to keep your minds open and do homework, read a lot, and not think that it's just empty assertions, your view versus my view. That's never right. And in my opinion, we will overcome huge divisions if we can help people to understand more accurately a real situation. Because so much of what divides our appeals to anti-facts and the idea that we can never discern which is which, this postmodern view I don't agree with at all, or if that's how it's going to be, I give up, because I can't imagine how one wins in just a brute force shouting match, how we're ever going to get anywhere on that. So I think my main point to you is don't have unrealistic expectations about how things work, in the sense that the world is easy, or that change comes easily, or that understanding is deep and widespread, or that abandoning reason is going to solve any problems. And if reason is hard, which it is because it requires a tremendous investment of knowledge, of effort, of organization, of self-discipline, of receptivity, even though it's hard, I'll insist that it's our best way forward. Now, having said that, the world's also really, especially now, noisy. We have a noisemaker-in-chief in the United States who is absolutely out to break things. I personally believe it's because he is psychologically ill. That's my own view, but it's a view that's based on a lot of serious reports by a lot of leading psychologists and psychiatrists who say that the man's mentally ill. I believe that that's the case, actually, from what I observe. That's not good, but it means that we're in a very noisy environment. We're also in a noisy environment in that the Sustainable Development Goals, or Laudato Si, compete with a lot of bits and bytes. The number one Twitter follower in the world right now is Katy Perry, with 105 million Twitter followers. If anyone knows her, that would be effective to help promote the Sustainable Development Goals. You probably know in your communities actors, musicians, artists who can reach people better than we can. On the top list, by the way, while Barack Obama has the third most followers on Twitter at 95 million. So that's a person of substance on the list in the policy world. The list other than him is Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, Ellen DeGeneres, Lady Gaga, Justin Timberlake, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kim Kardashian, Britney Spears, Ariana Grande, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Jimmy Fallon, Shakira, Jennifer Lopez. Donald Trump has 40 million, so he's got 1/3 of Katy Perry. There's at least some justice in the world. But that's a reality too. And that means that if you think about what people see, what they're listening to, what they're exposed to in their views, it's not SDGs morning till night, or it's not the climate change. So that's a practical challenge. You're networked. You must know people who go to rock concerts or people who have television shows in your community, who are the radio hosts, or are others who are heard. That's part of our effort. It has to be. So what I'm saying is, this is a good discussion. We have to be creative. We have to stand on 2 feet, one on facts, or what Aristotle might have called rationality, or philosophical contemplation, and on ethics or faith or the belief in a better world guided by values. Both of those, absolutely. We have to understand the complexity of the world that we're dealing with. Divided, distracted, indifferent. But then the question is, how are you going to get organized to be effective? That's the question to you, and the question I hope from you back to me and back to us. How can you help? What should we do? But this is a real effort needed. And 13 years is, on the one hand, not a lot of time, but it's enough time not to be flagrant and flippant, or to believe that we have to solve it tomorrow or forget it. We should strategize and think what can be done. And you should be thinking in the next 2 days, what resources do you have at hand? Who can you reach? What students can you reach? What universities can you reach? What mayors can you reach? What rock stars can you reach? So that we can share those ideas, but not oversimplify the problem.
Great, thank you very much. So we're going to wrap up this call, but just before that, just a couple of comments. I admit that I made myself a challenge of trying to note down every reference you made, but Professor, you went there through Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga. I will note a few of those down so I can keep my list, but I'm admitting that it's getting more difficult. So just to take away from this is, as you said, for us not to give up on the facts, because in a world with so much noise, they are the one true gift that we can hold on to break through that noise. And that the facts combined with efforts, with the hard work, can help us understand the problem, and that makes us better ambassadors for the solutions of those problems. And it's never easy, and I think a lot of people who hear from the work they've done in their own organizations and communities would agree with that. And I think this is why it's such a wonderful occasion to bring everyone together so that we can really work towards this big task of how we can learn from one another and use the facts to actually have an impact in our community. So thank you very much on that.